What happens when America's closest ally chooses China over the West? It's not just a trade deal, it's a global signal. Germany, the economic engine of Europe, is now openly deepening its ties with China. And in Washington, that move feels like a strategic betrayal. Just weeks after the US renewed efforts to isolate China economically, Berlin announced new rounds of bilateral talks with Beijing. Infrastructure partnerships, green tech collaboration, supply chain coordination. It's a full-spectrum engagement. Germany's foreign minister even described China as a partner in reshaping global trade, not a rival. While the US scrambles to contain China's influence, Germany seems to be handing it a fast pass into Europe's economic core. To Washington, it feels like defection. To Berlin, it's just business. But this shift isn't only political. It's corporate and deliberate. Volkswagen is boosting its investment in Chinese electric vehicle plants and opening a major R&D hub in Hefei. BMW is already spending billions on Chinese battery production and AI integration. Germany's industrial giants are sending a clear message. China isn't a risk, it's the future. US officials keep warning about overdependence and supply chain vulnerability. But German automakers are ignoring that. For them, betting on China isn't optional. It's survival. China is now the largest car market in the world. Meanwhile, Germany's domestic demand is shrinking. So while the US pushes for economic decoupling, German CEOs are quietly saying the obvious. We can't afford to choose America over China. Now, the fallout has begun. In a fiery post on Truth Social, President Trump accused Germany and the EU of siding with the enemy. He warned that America had been stabbed in the back by its own allies. He claimed Berlin was chasing short-term profits at the expense of long-term trust. Trump's base wasted no time. Calls are rising in Congress for retaliatory tariffs or even a review of NATO financial commitments. Because from Washington's perspective, this isn't about cars or chips. It's about loyalty. And Germany's loyalty is now under scrutiny. The United States isn't just observing, it's issuing warnings. Following Trump's reaction, several U.S. lawmakers began proposing new tariffs on European goods, specifically targeting autos and industrial machinery. But Europe isn't backing down. Brussels slammed the U.S. threats as economic blackmail and vowed to defend European interests. Germany's finance minister hinted that any U.S. tariff moves would be met with equal force, escalating what began as an economic disagreement into a looming trade war. And here's what makes it worse. This time, Germany has China in its corner. Beijing is ready to reroute trade, build new partnerships, and bypass American pressure. In short, the transatlantic alliance is fracturing, not with a bang, but through tariffs, ultimatums, and shifting loyalties. Behind Germany's defiance is a deeper crisis. The German economy is struggling, rattled by energy shocks, inflation, and a shrinking industrial base. And there's one trading partner still buying in massive volumes: China. For the 7th consecutive year, China is Germany's largest trading partner, more than $250 billion in annual trade. This isn't just export volume, it's economic survival. Siemens, BASF, Mercedes, many of Germany's top firms are deeply embedded in Chinese supply chains. As domestic growth slows, German firms are doubling down on China, not the US, for long-term demand. But the more Germany depends on China, the more exposed it becomes. US officials warn that Berlin is building a trap for itself, an economic structure that strengthens China's foothold in Europe, while eroding Western leverage in future crises. In trying to protect its economy, Germany may be redefining the entire Western order. Inside the Pentagon and White House, alarm bells are ringing. Intelligence sources say Chinese tech partnerships inside the EU are expanding, especially in AI, semiconductors, and green energy. And guess who's enabling them? While the US blacklists Chinese chip makers, German firms are still exporting high-end manufacturing tools. While Washington bans Huawei, German telecoms continue to rely on its infrastructure. Trump has now gone further, publicly accusing the EU of undermining global security in exchange for trade access. And for a country preparing for long-term strategic competition with China, that's more than frustrating. It's dangerous. Because if the US can't rely on Europe, then who's left to hold the line? Behind the diplomatic handshakes and summit smiles, a rift is growing deeper. Transatlantic trade, the cornerstone of US-EU cooperation, is now under real threat. From electric vehicles to climate tech subsidies, the US and Europe are no longer aligned. Germany's pivot to China is accelerating the split. Washington insiders now believe that the trust which once defined US-EU economic relations is broken. Talks on digital taxes are stalled. Climate collaboration is fading. And with Berlin racing to deepen ties with Beijing, the entire framework could collapse. What once looked like allied powers shaping a shared future now resembles a slow-motion decoupling. Germany claims it isn't choosing sides, but the data tells a different story. On paper, Berlin promotes a balanced strategy, defense cooperation with the US, and trade engagement with China. In practice, its economic focus is leaning sharply eastward. Over 5,000 German companies now operate in China. Many are relocating R&D centers, logistics hubs, and procurement chains away from the West and into Asia. German officials call it de-risking. US lawmakers call it double-dealing. Because the more Germany invests in China's market, the harder it becomes to stand with the US in any geopolitical conflict. Zoom out, and the stakes are even higher. Germany's pivot is not just about bilateral trade. It's a shift in the global balance. Chinese regulatory standards are spreading. Belt and road infrastructure is entering Europe. And now, with Berlin's endorsement, China is gaining something it has long desired: legitimacy inside the West. For decades, the US assumed that Europe would anchor the post-war global system. But Germany's choices are raising an unsettling question. What if the next global order doesn't center around America? And make no mistake, Germany isn't speaking for all of Europe. Tensions are rising within the EU. France is privately pushing for greater distance from Beijing. Italy has already exited the Belt and Road Initiative. Eastern European countries like Poland and Lithuania are openly warning that Germany's strategy could jeopardize EU security. Behind closed doors, diplomats describe Germany's policy as reckless and self-serving. The concern is clear. Berlin's pursuit of short-term economic gain could leave the entire bloc vulnerable to long-term manipulation. Instead of leading Europe, Germany may be splintering it. This goes beyond trade, into the realm of defense. As Germany strengthens economic ties with China, serious questions are surfacing inside NATO. If tensions rise over Taiwan, will Berlin stand firm? Can Germany be trusted to resist Chinese influence within Europe? Because economic dependence today could mean strategic silence tomorrow. Already discussions within the EU on defense technology are shifting. They're drifting away from US standards and moving toward more neutral frameworks. If this trend continues, NATO's unity could fracture from within. The world is no longer a simple US-China standoff. It's becoming a three-way game of power, and Germany has just tilted the balance. The US, the EU, and China are now in a high-stakes contest for influence, innovation, and control. Germany's pivot has changed the game. Now, US policymakers are reevaluating everything. Tariffs, sanctions, even military deployments. Because if China can pull Europe deeper into its orbit, then the post-World War II order that America built may not survive this decade. This isn't just about trade deals. It's about who leads the world next. And for the first time in a generation, it's no longer clear that it will be America. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.